Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be invited here to talk today about the OneStop Shop, a new business model for Retrofit, however, quite an established business model in the construction community. I'm going to be focusing more on the actual practice rather than policy, so we're going to hear from the trenches today about what's going on. I think the key to being involved in a one-stop shop delivery is your background. So I'm just going to give a quick background and introduction into our company and how we evolved as Durkan EcoFix. Durkan EcoFix is a combination of 40 years construction experience in Durkan residential, a new homes builder in Ireland, England, and now Brazil. We have, as again, been involved. We're a second-generation company. As we evolved as a company and adapted to new sustainable design for new homes, we obviously had to adapt, due to the climate, that knowledge to the retrofit market. And in stepped Durkan Mallory Coco and Jay Stewart and his team to come in to advise about the specifics and the reality of retrofitting, not only in the Irish market, but using great examples you've seen a lot from Germany, Europe, and indeed across the US. So Durkan Waller are constantly advising, constantly updating us, and constantly with us step by step as we learn and develop through the industry. So to talk about the one-stop shop, I'm just going to give you a broad analysis of exactly what we mean by one-stop shop. Maybe there might have been a perception that a one-stop shop is getting your cavity under the one umbrella and your external wall insulation and a boiler and air tightness. It's a little bit more to us, and that's why we talk about this sort of holistic approach to retrofit. It starts out at review analysis, and a key word I think in that is experience. We didn't hear a lot today early on in terms of policy and practice and philosophy in terms of experience. We talked about contractors, individuals. I think we need to focus in on experience a bit more to deliver a proper and qualitative approach to this market. We will look at our analysis, our assessments, and how we go through our policy. Really, the main focus will be on the sort of review analysis experience, following through to result benefit data. However, a key part of the actual one-stop shop to us is finance, and most importantly, customer care. I think finance has been touched on already, so we'll bring it into our presentation slightly. So we look at review experience. Obviously, as a one-stop shop, it's the start to finish, cradle to grave, in effect. So we offer an assessment, a free assessment, obviously, to clients. These are typically BEOR assessor trained, or if not, typically salesmen who go out and gather knowledge and information on a home. This is a key part because I think probably earlier on we talked, and there's a few comments from down the back in relation to, are these assessors qualified to give recommendations? In an answer, no, they're not. All our information is gathered, brought back. This can be established through satellite offices. It's analysed by engineers, architects who determine the specification and the best retrofit opportunity for that house. I think that's a key point that should be made, and I think as the industry evolves, we're all learning every day. I think we all need to appreciate that when we're looking at deep retrofit, as we've explained earlier on, deep retrofit involves a lot more than just individual tweaks to a house. So then we look at our complete range of services. We'll just go into that in a minute. We also look at the house as an interactive system. Again, our assessors will gather all the relative information. We'll take it back and we'll assess the best policies for that. When looking at systems, we need to know what best products and systems are applicable to certain houses. And as you know yourself, there's very few houses that are exactly the same. Be them the same estate of a 50s, 40s estate. There's extensions, side alleys. They're all somewhat unique. They're your home. So let's just look, and at the end of it, actually, we'll talk about our vision, I suppose, in terms of how we want to bring this to a very systematic sort of approach to the building service. We'll discuss that later on. So if we focus on the range of services, again, this is more what people are talking about when you talk about a one-stop shop. You've got everything from design specification down to air tightness. You have external wall insulation, cavity, internal wall insulation. Most importantly, we have ventilation there as well. we provide the full range of services for a house. I think this gives us a good impartial view. We're not trying to sell one specific product, sell one specific system, but we understand how everything goes together. When you take a holistic view on a house, you are able to specify the best solution for that house. And most of our solutions are somewhat tailored. So this is a very early and somewhat simple model we put together. Obviously, as we learned about the types of products that are available on the market, we did our own specification and design. I think that's very important to get the best results. And then I think, as we spoke before about the house as an interactive system, I think you've got to work with different solutions to different housing issues. So here we have the internal of a house. Again, Jay and Delant Waller would have worked with us on our specification. You've probably noticed this is a proprietary air tightness membrane on the inside here. This is what we would promote for internal insulation. However, we do not think internal insulation is the best practice. We prefer the most efficient and effective would be the external. But in this particular model, you can see how the whole system will interact. This is a typical house. It's a hollow block construction. In this particular case, we did internal floor and external insulation on that wall or in the house. Then by taking this sort of holistic view, we can then review our specifications. The technicians, the team will go away, look at our specifications. In particular here, we're talking about moving windows forward. Actually a more popular practice as we go through our deep retrofit. This detail here is most effective when combined with air tightness. And here you can see the effects and the cold bridging from the thermal imaging by bringing it forward. Again, the technicians will take it away. We work with all types of product. The couple of examples there have been Rockwool. We've worked with EPS, Phenolic. And again, we'll review each product and how it works with the fabric of a building. I think, again, as we said, very few buildings are the same, so there's going to be no standardized solution for these things. Here we look at a roofing calculation over, I think it's a 3-year period on wall moisture content. Again, this is a review of wall moisture movement over a period of time to make sure you have breathability in your product and what you're applying. I think when you take this holistic view of the house, I think it gives the contractor and the one-stop shop provider accountability. And I think that's the one word that's very important. Rather than trying to get disjointed people to do single efforts on a house, I think we need accountability. That's one reference, one point. So when you're combining external wall insulation with floor or cavity, or sometimes we do all three, external, internal, and cavity, you need to know what you're doing. You need to understand the fabric of the building, understand moisture movement, and most importantly, understand ventilation. So where this brings us to is how we are actually going to perform deep retrofit, but do it on a mass scale. And I think that's the big question that was asked here earlier on. We do advocate deep retrofit, but it's quite difficult. I mean, to do 1,000 houses, construct from new, from start to finish over 3 locations is not a difficult task as a builder contractor, but doing 1,000 deep retrofits over 1,000 different locations is a different task. So really, it's a little bit crude, but it might get the message. We need to go from DIY to DHL. We need to take a very systematic approach to what we're trying to achieve. I'm not going to leave that slide up there too long. It's quite a big screen. In Allen Park, this is the house we talked about earlier on. We did a lot of 3D modelling on this house. It was actually a pilot. It's difficult to talk about contractors talking about R&D. This actually was a friend of mine's house because we couldn't get anyone to the house to retrofit 2 years ago. No one understood what it was or what was happening. We actually did a combination here of external wall insulation, internal insulation, cavity wall, underground heating, attic, as I said, high-efficiency boilers and heat controls. More importantly, we actually put a heat recovery ventilation system in with ProAir. The particular tenant of this house was an asthmatic. He has never slept as well, and he was saying 20 years. It's made a phenomenal difference to his life, actually. So talking through the sort of holistic approach to building, this is just another example. I'm going to keep moving here. We look at one of the knock-on effects of that holistic model that we talked about, which is finance. I know Brendan's touched on it here before. I think as the one-stop shop, we have to understand when we're giving cost information what the implications and benefits of that are. So as a standard practice, we would provide cost information along with what grants are available to our customers. Also, it is only by understanding these costs and benefits of deep retrofit can we minimize the investment risk. We heard fantastic stories earlier on from Germany in relation to their spend on deep retrofits. 75,000. I think we could build a house from new for 75,000, but it's a huge, huge expenditure. But to convince the likes of Bank of Ireland, to convince the financial industry, we have to understand the cost benefit of what we're actually doing. So therefore, we're going to talk a little bit later on about the matching principle as well, which I think is key information from the banking system and indeed the utilities, who are going to be using a combination of saves you pay, grant money from the SEI through the SEI, and obviously then private finance. And under the new NURP, obviously 70% of finance will be through private, through the HES. So let's just look at a quick example we have of some ex-post information. It's very hard to get ex-post information. There's very little of it out there. We've looked all across, Italy, Germany. There's a lot of it. We have to probably dig a little bit deeper there. I believe the SEI are doing a huge collation exercise there at the moment, and I'm keen to share information with them as soon as possible. But this is one example we have. This is a full 2-year data graph. So we can see we achieved a 38% saving on our on the gas consumption in this particular house. The key figures here being the average gas bill was €1,510. We can see that just here. Post was €940, which is a saving. An actual saving from the actual bills was €570. Clients are delighted with it. It tells a very good tale. As you all know, last winter was the coldest in 30 years, I think, and they still achieved almost a 40% saving. What's an interesting factor in this slide here is this little graph at the bottom. Post-retrofit, they used more energy sort of in the 9 months, shall we call them. This is somewhat of a rebound effect. Blair Hamilton from VEIC has always told us about the rebound effect of deep retrofit, and you should only factor in 75% of the saving and 75% of that again in terms of finance. These, again, I know the clients in this particular house, rather than, and it's probably quite common here, you spend a fortune on your gas and electricity during the winter months. When it hits May, you just switch everything off and go, look, that's it until October, or herself complains because they're a few degrees lower than we are. In this case, they just said, we knew we saved money. We kept things going through May on the cold evenings, so they spent a little bit more during the summer times, which is also interesting as well. We use a controlled temperature system, Camera controls, and what was interesting, they have a 3-year-old baby called Sarah. They could moderate the actual temperature in that room at a constant all year round, which is a great thing, I think, for any family. So looking at ex-post results, we're focusing all the way through to results and benefits. What's somewhat of not a split incentive here is, in terms of the NURP, which is an excellent document and understands the deep concept of retrofit, we look at efficient and effective ways of getting euro per kilowatt hour saved. And I think that's a big objective for all of us. Again, as I said, we're still learning on the most effective and challenging ways to do that. We've worked with a lot of county councils to try and help them, and indeed on a tender process, to work to get up to C1 ratings for the most cost-efficient measures. And I know in the green print document that Joe Curtin produced, that's what he talks about, is that C1 barrier. And I think that's a great goal for us to set. You can see in Germany and other countries, they've set it a lot higher, that bar. So we just need to learn on ways of getting there. And again, we need to focus on ways of getting to a C1 level, using qualitative materials and being quite innovative to get there through the deep software or not. So here's again another example. These are all real figures of a challenge we had to get a C1 rating in a house. You'll see here that the cost of this retrofit was 18,966 here. We brought this from a G to a B3 rating. The actual cost per kilowatt hour meter squared works out about 60.95, which is interesting. It does vary a little bit, obviously, when you look at the lower end towards attic insulation, air tightness being the most effective. We can get a slightly higher value, but there is a diminishing return on that. This is a good result. I think we could have done a little bit better. We overshot it a bit, but it was probably erred on the side of caution. But what's interesting about a deep retrofit, and if you look at the list of options that were produced, we also produced a list of options of how to get to certain ratings. I think what's key for the finance world to understand is that, we talk about external wall insulation having a 20-year payback. I mean, it may not. It might be 40 years if you don't combine it with certain other aspects like a new boiler or good heat controls. I think that's what has to be sort of thrashed out and talked among the community to understand the actual mechanics of getting a payback period, and we've been talking about it earlier on. So this is a full menu of options here, but some factors without, in terms of a matrix of measures, we may not achieve an effective payback period at all. So moving on from that there, this is actually the house here. It was a county council house that we did, so it's a real live case study. Again, it's the story from the trenches here. The cost of retrofitting this house, it was a deep retrofit. It was also slightly on an asset management system because we had to do a bit of internal renovation. But the cost of this deep retrofit was nearly half the cost of a new build. So this isn't about collecting contractors together and seeing what happens and, let's see if we can logistically challenge it. There was huge issues here. Because we brought it up to such a high rating, we had to ensure that there was proper ventilation in this house. And you'll see, I don't know if you can see in the corners here, we actually, up in the top corners here, our airco on this particular unit came in, and we're delighted the county council went with that ventilation. Jay is a great advocate of talking about ventilation, understanding the building dynamic. And when we're talking deep retrofit, we cannot stress enough the issues of ventilation, understanding the issues of ventilation. It's a very complex area, and that's why you need people with you who understand what we're doing. We heard before, we probably focus on the NERP, about euro per kilowatt hour and efficiency. Ventilation is in the deep software, but it doesn't really get you very high on the euro per kilowatt hour. But ventilation saves lives. It's very important that people understand that, and we'll move on to that just a bit later on. But it's a fundamental fact. If you take nothing else away from today, if you are deep retrofitting, it's not a mix of tasks. It's a full house build, understanding the building dynamic and fabric. So moving on from that, we have a customer focus, and Josephine talked to you on about satisfaction and customer satisfaction. And I think the one thing about retrofitting, we're delighted as well because our customers are genuinely happy. We get great stories. We don't mind calling them up. Everyone's warmer. Everyone's happier. And hopefully I see a few happy clients in the audience as well today. So when we talk about that, the private market is fundamentally focused on warmth and health. It's the human factor. Kilowatt per hour is irrelevant at the moment. But again, that's only a private sector. We still need to understand these factors so that we can convince finance houses to invest in these factors. But at the moment, the customer focus is purely warmth and comfort. Health. Ireland has the 4th highest prevalence of asthma worldwide. The importance of ventilation is paramount. I think we heard Brendan talking about the legacy of building stock we've been left with. It is serious, and I think if we don't take the right approach to this retrofit opportunity, we'll be left with a worse legacy. So we need to focus on quality and understanding and get good teams of OneStop Shop contractors. There's plenty of work for everyone to produce that qualitative work. The deep retrofit, it's quite an invasive task. So we have to train our personnel on every step. Tidiness, cleanliness, politeness is a key thing. Retrofits can take 2 to 3 weeks possibly. So it's a very important thing. It is very invasive. And I think communication is the key there. Once you communicate to people that it will be noisy, there will be disruption, I think people can understand that. And also the key to that is the timeline of how long it's going to take. that just gains trust and respect. And, I think we talked about satisfaction earlier on, and that's why hopefully a lot of people are very, very satisfied with the service. I think this is the one thing that the new National Energy Retrofit Programme understands. And I think there's been a huge amount of listening and learning to the international experiences that the SEI have brought in, and that St. has produced this document in light of that. And I think a key word there is brand awareness, and I think we need to focus on that trust rather than having a disjointed approach to the actual retrofit industry. So to summarise, I'm not even sure I'm on time. To summarise, we can't stress enough quality control. I think, though, rather than trying to penalise people post-event, I think we need to focus up front on quality control and training. And again, experience being a key word there. I think there's a lot of focus at the moment in terms of logistical ability and how we're going to deliver, without really understanding the experience of the contractors, or as we say, service providers, to providing deep retrofits. And we want to keep stressing the importance of quality in that matter. Again, I come from the practice side, so I can sort of shoot from the hip here. There's a lot of bureaucracy. It's not helping us in terms of efficiency. It's costing the consumer. And I think there's a lot of unnecessary bureaucracy. I believe in regulation and quality control, but I believe it's getting a little bit heavy down the bottom for us at the moment. I think we need to work together. Again, we've got one common goal in this room to get a proper result. Again, that comes back to my comments on the complexity of deep retrofits and the knock-on effects. It sort of harps on the common message would be experience. I think it is moving on. See how far Germany have gone in terms of their deep retrofit. I think we need to keep focusing and keep learning. I think a lot of us in that respect. 70% of the financing for the private retrofit is to come from the financial market. Again, we're looking forward to working with more of the financial institutions to share our information with them. And I think by that understanding and again, that trust between contractors, service providers, energy suppliers, that we can understand the effects of our investment. And, we've talked to some very clever investment houses, and what they're trying to do is minimise that risk, just get rid of variations. So I think there's a long road to go there. Again, attract investment. There's no single solution for finance. Again, we're on the doorstep listening to our customers. I think one of the biggest shames at the moment is the rate of saving. I think it's probably consistent of any recessionary time. The Irish are saving over 11% of disposable income. I think we have to look at a point in time in Ireland and look at the actual conditions. And if you read papers from all over the world, they talk about looking at the financial situation, the demographics, the fiscal policy. Here we have a huge saving epidemic, we call it. It's 11% taken out of the economy. We have to rechannel that money back into this industry, and that's where it'll be part of the 3 or 4 modes of financing this industry. In terms of delivering on a grand scale, and we talk about this before, and Jay and I talk about this a lot. I mean, there's great examples. Again, I've mentioned earlier on the VEIC, non-government organisations to act as an independent for rollout. This is a concept. It's a not-for-profit concept, which I think would be a great link between the financials, the SEI, government organisations, and the public to create a great brand awareness. And certainly, if you're talking about small disjointed contractors, we have to train them up. That's what's happened in the States. There's great examples and role models elsewhere. I think we just have to broaden the scope, and I think we've all gathered that, and certainly the new policy documents will understand that as well. And finally, I think we all have a lot to learn. Certainly we do. We're not a big contractor. We're young. We've got good building experience, which has stood time, so we're happy to stand over our work. But we're learning all the time. And I think today I'd just like to congratulate Joe Curtin from the IIEA and indeed the SAI. It's a great, hopefully a think tank is going to turn into an annual event. We're looking forward, as I said, to sharing information, trading information with our counterparties, and learning on this long road. Thank you very much.